Tonight's celebration was supposed to be perfect, until a single crash of glass proved it wasn't. When a husband brings a folder to a family party and calls it a quick tax update, it isn't paperwork. It's a plan. In this story, a sister's ruined birthday becomes the only thing that saves her company, her home, and her name. Stay with me as we follow the clues from a shattered statue to a hidden rebrand and a signature he thought he could steal under fairy lights. If you've ever been pressured to sign something just to keep the peace, this one will feel uncomfortably familiar. Before we dive in, a quick note. This channel is Cheating Stories 7. If you enjoy gripping, high-stakes drama about betrayal and consequences, hit subscribe like this video and tell me in the comments, what would you do if a partner tried to turn your celebration into a signature trap? Now, let's step into caught cheating at the family party. I took everything back. I kept telling myself this night would flow like a flawless rehearsal. A clean demo with no bugs, no lag, just proof that the last 5 years of sacrifice meant something real. The backyard of our new home glowed under strings of fairy lights, swaying gently with the evening breeze. The caterer arranged tacos so perfectly they looked like tiny sculptures on porcelain trays, while the playlist hummed in the background with warm, low beats. Friends laughed in scattered groups, mingling with early investors who had once watched me code in hoodies and pitch in borrowed blazers. At the center of the gift table, under a cone of golden light, stood the glass statue Caleb had commissioned. A clear, faceted figure he always said represented clarity and future. He loved those words, clarity, future. He repeated them like prayers, the kind meant to hypnotize both himself and the crowd. I had a short toast folded in my pocket, gritty lines about second chances, about rebuilding from ashes. Caleb, ever the charming host, kept one hand on my back, steering me through conversations like an MC rehearsed in front of a mirror. After your toast, he murmured smoothly, we'll go through a few quick tax updates, nothing heavy. His finger tapped a thin folder on the table, the signature line marked with a bright flag. Everyone's here anyway, might as well be efficient. My cousin Maya drifted close, her phone lifted as though she were capturing memories. But her framing was strange, less me, more the folder. Every time I turned, she tilted the angle, ensuring the paper remained the star of her footage as if it were the real guest of honor. Noah, my older brother, arrived late. He offered no apology, no hug, no joke to cut the tension like he once did at childhood dinners. Instead, he lifted a flute of champagne and stationed himself at the hedge line where the light barely touched. When our eyes met, he looked away first, fast, like a man checking exits instead of faces. Caleb clapped for attention. Everyone, he announced, before Jenna changes the world again, a toast. Laughter followed, polite, practiced, the kind people use when they expect a camera flash. Caleb angled me toward the glittering statue and the waiting folder. Maya slid into position beside me, her phone steady, her face unreadable. I lifted my glass. Thank you for believing. Those were the only words I managed. Noah moved. Champagne arced through the air, catching candle flames and camera lights cascading across the dessert table. A row of sparklers hissed out, and with one violent twist of his wrist, the flute cracked the statue at its neck. The figure toppled, shattered across the lawn, and 50 conversations died mid-sentence. A child gasped. Somewhere a fork struck porcelain with a sharp, shocked ping. Caleb's performance was instant, righteous. "What is wrong with you?" he barked, lunging toward Noah with palms raised like a referee breaking up a fight. My parents arrived first. My mother pulled Noah close as if he were still a boy having a meltdown after a long car ride. My father addressed the crowd with a practiced calm. He just needs to let it out, as though explaining the weather. Eyes turned to me, pitying, curious, waiting for me to cry. I didn't. I watched. And in that pause, I saw Caleb's mask slip. His eyes darted to Maya, whose camera still held steady on the folder. Caleb's hand hovered near the tab like a dealer about to flip the final card. "We can salvage this," he whispered, words meant only for me. I wasn't sure if he meant the party or the plan. "Music," I said to the DJ, my voice even. He nodded, filling the silence with brighter notes. I moved calmly through the wreckage, apologizing to guests, promising the caterer I'd cover any broken glass, guiding children inside. Investors formed a crescent of polite distance. Caleb spun excuses about Noah's stress, his rough year, how tonight was meant for joy. But in my head, I began a new file labeled evidence. The folder's weight. Caleb's finger glued to its spine even as he consoled guests. The hollow tick I'd heard inside the statue's base earlier, which Caleb brushed off as a decorative screw. The porch camera that had captured arrivals. The hallway camera that faced my office door. The banking app that held its own quiet record of his studio consulting, nights disguised as hotel stays. I didn't need applause, I needed a record. When the last guest left and the caterer's van pulled away, I wiped champagne from the stones and told my parents I was fine. They believed me because they wanted to. Caleb offered another apology about Noah. I nodded at the right moments and said I was tired. He went to bed. I stayed awake under the pendant light at the kitchen island, replaying the night through my doorbell app. And there it was, Caleb and Meyer on the porch 20 minutes before Noah ever arrived, leaning close the way people lean when secrets bind them. The wind shredded most words, but one sentence came through whole, sharp enough to cut. If she signs tonight, Caleb said, it's done. I didn't yet know what it was, but I knew two things. Noah hadn't shattered the night for sport. He'd shattered it to stop something. And the folder everyone pretended was boring glowed brighter than any candle in the yard. I turned off the light. The night wasn't perfect anymore. It was broken. But broken edges cut sharper, and sharp edges can be useful. I didn't collapse after the party. I sorted. That's always been my way. When chaos spills, I draw columns, I build order, I make patterns speak. After midnight, the house was silent, but silence carries ghosts. Plates stacked neatly on the counter still smelled of lime and cilantro. Music lingered faint in my head, the echo of laughter already sour. Caleb had gone to bed, the door shut like a line of defense. I sat alone at the kitchen island, the pendant light a lone witness, and opened my laptop. At the top of a blank spreadsheet, I typed a title I had never intended to share with anyone, Quiet Audit. Columns bloomed across the screen, date, merchant, card, location, memo, supporting artifact. I color-coded the headers because colors don't lie. Patterns like to be seen, and once seen, they rarely hide again. The first pull was clean, 6 months of charges from both personal and company cards. The results bled onto the screen like confessions. Hotel stays where there should have been none. Not resorts, not family weekends. Business hotels near interstates, check-ins at 11:48 p.m., checkouts before sunrise. Perfect overlays on the nights Caleb claimed to be consulting at the studio. Rideshare receipts drew neat arrows from my office to a strip mall parcel shop. That parcel shop's address matched the billing location of a vendor I had never approved, Studio Nights LLC. Small transfers dripped into it on a rhythm that pretended randomness. $287, $42, $311, $00, $299, $60. Forgettable to an outsider, unforgivable to me, enough to matter. I opened our prenup. It had always been unromantic, and I had insisted on that. A clause carved like a lever. Infidelity paired with financial misconduct triggers immediate remedies, temporary control of the house title, automatic separation of accounts, unilateral authority to audit any business tied to my name. Caleb had once called it paranoid. Tonight it was oxygen. At 2:11 a.m., I sent my attorney a short email with 3 attachments and 1 sentence. Please activate the trigger and place a soft freeze on Caleb's spend authority pending review. A second request went to the bank. Revoke all wire templates tied to Studio Nights LLC and enforce 2-factor verification on any new payee added from Caleb's credentials. The act of typing steadied me more than breathing ever could. I dove back into my inbox. Auto-archived notices rose like bones from the silt. A calendar invite, weeks old, subject line, brand transition touchpoint. The attached agenda was dressed in corporate neutral, but the words were a thief's mask. New dawn, not my company, not any roadmap I had ever written. And yet there it was, carved into someone else's timeline. I bookmarked it, copied it, dropped it into a folder named with counsel. The cameras came next. Porch feed. 20 minutes before Noah arrived, Caleb and Maya stood close, too close, their posture tilted with urgency. The wind chewed up most words, but posture never lies. Hallway cam. During the toast that never was, Maya slipped from the crowd and paused outside my office door. Her hand brushed the knob, locked. She glanced back, then floated on, smile intact. I remembered the hollow tick inside the statue's base, disguised as a decorative screw. Why would glass meant to stand eternal carry a hidden cavity? Why did Caleb guard that folder the way gamblers guard their final chip? I pulled up photos a guest had airdropped. One image froze Caleb at the gift table, folder turned outward, signature flags flashing like theater props. Maya in the background, camera tilted, making the paper glow. I began a new sheet. Left column, what Caleb said. Right column, what Caleb did. Under tax update, I wrote in bold, taxes don't require witnesses. Under studio consulting, I pasted the hotel charges. Under helping Maya with creative, I pasted the transfers to Studio Nights LLC. At the bottom in bold black, I copied the prenup clause, not a threat. A mechanism. I texted Noah, coffee tomorrow, not at the house. He replied with one word, finally. A minute later came another, sorry. I typed back, thank you for the time. His thumb-up emoji appeared, his version of tenderness when he thought he had failed me. The bank's automated reply arrived first, request received. Minutes later, my attorney responded with a line that steadied my lungs. We can file temporary title control before noon. Attached was a checklist so precise it felt like medicine. Secure accounts. Inventory devices, preserve messages, do not confront, let paper walk first. I printed the new dawn agenda and laid it beside the mortgage statement. One paper spoke of continuity, the other spoke of betrayal. Together they formed a portrait. On an index card, I wrote 3 action items and taped them inside the pantry door where I would see them with coffee. Revoke wire templates. Retrieve new dawn deck. Talk to Noah without parents present. I did not write confront Caleb. I did not write explain to mom. I was done explaining. At 3:17 a.m., I closed the laptop. The kitchen was cool and still, the kind of silence that amplifies heartbeats. My hands rested flat on stone. I was not angry. Anger is loud. Anger burns oxygen. This was not anger. This was process. Process moves knives. Tomorrow would bring signatures, letters, maybe locksmiths. Tonight I had a clause, a list, and one sentence caught through the wind. If she signs tonight, it's done. It won't be done, not like that. At 8:30 the next morning, I dialed the bank from my office. I pressed the button that announced the line was recorded, gave my verification phrase, and asked the rep to revoke Caleb's transfer permissions. Every scheduled payment to Studio Nights LLC needed to die immediately. I also asked for the audit trail behind a suspicious wire template. The rep paused. Silence bloomed on the line, the kind that means a stranger's screen just revealed something messy. She promised a secure email within the hour. I thanked her and sipped coffee like I wasn't dismantling a life. The email arrived before the mug cooled. Screenshots stamped in time. Creator, C.A. Lewis. Memo line, royalty split. Beneficiary, Studio Nights LLC. Every click traced back to Caleb's phone, his login, our home network. The evidence sat heavy on my screen, not abstract, not debatable. I dragged the files into my folder named with counsel and stared at the words royalty split until they lost meaning. Split with whom? For what royalties? My company sold service, not songs. I searched my inbox again, pulling at threads I had ignored. One attachment surfaced, a short audio file from Maya sent weeks ago as a fun teaser. I had never opened it. Now I did. The sound was thin, a keyboard riff, a few breathy bars of nothing, but metadata never lies. Timestamp, 11:56 p.m., location tag, our house, device, a phone named Caleb Work, and in the background, buried under the keys, a click. metallic, distinct, the sound of the small safe in my desk. I had once stored a draft algorithm there, a fragile, valuable outline for a maintenance process that could pivot entire contracts. A month ago, it vanished. I had blamed myself, filed it under careless, but the click told a different story. My phone buzzed. Noah. His voice was low, like someone speaking across a dark street. He told me he had seen Caleb palming the hollow screw from the statue's base, the same screw I remembered as heavier than glass alone. He had watched Caleb position the folder with sticky flags between us and the cameras, angling it like a magician's deck. He hadn't had proof strong enough to stop me from signing, only instinct and a clock. Chaos was the only weapon he had left. He used it. Then Noah's voice dropped further. He said he had followed Caleb and Maya behind the studio 2 nights earlier, watched them kiss in the dim green glow of an exit sign. He sounded ashamed, like confession itself was a wound. I told him shame was a tax we would never pay again. When we hung up, I opened a new document titled Chain of Custody. I logged each artifact, time, source, file name, method. I listed who touched it after me. Evidence wasn't only about truth, it was about proving you hadn't dirtied it. 3 missed calls from my mother pulsed on my screen. I let them fade. I could already script her plea, Noah's temper, Caleb's brilliance, family unity. The family had chosen its orbit. They circled him, not me. I drafted a careful message to Meyer instead. Coffee, your schedule, I want your side. I added a small apology for the scene at the party, vague enough to bait but not to shield her. Meanwhile, I traced the phrase New Dawn online, a domain freshly registered, privacy-wrapped, but still sloppy. The registrar traced back to an IP I recognized, ours. The agenda Caleb had slid beneath his toast spoke of transition incentives and legacy asset migration. Neutral words, predatory intent. My attorney called next. She confirmed she had already filed a separation of funds notice to Caleb's counsel. She was drafting a preservation letter demanding devices, accounts, and backups be frozen. She asked me for clean chain of custody notes. I already had them. The doorbell camera clip played on my phone again. The wind tore most words away, but one sentence was whole. Caleb's voice, if she signs tonight, it's done. That wasn't strategy, that was confession. In our bedroom, Caleb had left a note on my pillow, call me when you're calm. Words written by men who wanted your facts, reduced to feelings. I photographed it, cataloged it, left it there. By noon, Maya confirmed coffee. A quiet cafe near my office, neutral ground. I printed the bank's screenshots, the New Dawn deck, and a fresh copy of the prenup clause. I slipped them into a neutral folder with no tabs, no flags. The house was silent when I locked the door behind me. But silence no longer meant peace. It meant preparation. Caleb didn't come home that evening like a husband carrying shame. He arrived rehearsed, every step measured, his shirt pressed, his smile stretched into something that looked almost official. He positioned himself in the living room as though the space were a courtroom and he the one delivering opening remarks. Jenna, he began, palms spread, voice smooth. Last night was traumatic for all of us. Noah is unstable, you know that. He ruined your birthday, turned a moment of joy into chaos. And I panicked. I tried to manage things the only way I knew how. If some of my choices seemed questionable, they were never meant to hurt you. I was only trying to ease the weight you carry. You've been drowning in work, obsessed with every detail. Someone had to step in. Behind him, my parents hovered like a silent jury already leaning toward his side. My mother clasped Caleb's wrist, her eyes soft, her tone drenched with mercy. Noah is troubled, she whispered, as though compassion alone could rewrite facts. But he's your brother. Family needs compassion now. Don't drag business into this. Don't make it uglier. My father, sterner but aligned, added his own decree. Sign whatever tax adjustment Caleb's prepared. Let this pass. Family matters stay private. Their words rolled over me like a sermon, practiced and heavy. They weren't defending truth. They were defending stability. Theirs, not mine. I set a small USB drive on the table and watched the flicker in their eyes. Family matters privately, I repeated softly, unless family rewrites loyalty with a wire transfer. The laptop screen lit under my hand, spilling artifacts across the room like X-rays. Wire logs tying Caleb to Studio Nights LLC. Hotel ledgers aligned with his so-called consulting nights. Doorbell footage showing him slipping out with Maya. Audio metadata from my own office, a safe opened in the dark. My father inhaled sharply. My mother froze. Caleb's jaw locked, his carefully scripted calm straining. "Anyone standing with me," I said quietly, "will not go down with him." The silence grew dense, thick as stone. My mother's hand slipped from Caleb's wrist. My father's voice faltered, caught between denial and shame. Caleb's eyes narrowed, but he didn't speak. Then I twisted the knife. Another ledger appeared on screen, 6 months of Caleb's generosity. Quiet payments to cover my parents' mortgage cushion, numbers that bought their silence. "Looks generous, doesn't it?" I asked, almost kind. "Until you realize every dollar aligned your loyalty with his." My mother's face broke, gratitude souring into humiliation. My father pressed his lips tight, unable to conjure another sermon. The doorbell chimed. Meyer entered like she owned the air, perfume first, voice light, expression smug. "This is a misunderstanding," she announced. Studio Nights was just creative experiments, collaborative, no lines crossed. I slid a printout across the table, an anonymous fundraiser post painting Noah as jealous, me as controlling, Caleb as the victim. The IP traced to Caleb's device. Maya's smirk faltered, her mask cracking at the edges. I didn't shout. I didn't beg. I redrew the borders with calm precision. "I won't fund Maya. I won't sign anything Caleb presents without counsel, and I won't accept sermons bought with mortgage relief. Boundaries effective immediately." The air chilled. My father reached for one last scrap of moral high ground, muttering about family unity, about appearances. But appearances had already shattered the night the statue broke. And outside, the online smear had already begun. Burner accounts spun narratives, Noah the jealous brother, me the cruel sister. The lies spread faster than truth, but I didn't chase them. For the first time, I let them run because my audience was no longer the public. My audience was narrower, sharper banks, lawyers, investors. The only spectators that mattered when you were cutting rot from the root. The conference room smelled of stale carpet cleaner and ink. Neutral territory, my attorney's choice. No living room sentiment, no family shadows. Just 4 walls, a rectangular table, and a notary at the end with her leather journal open, pen poised. I chose my seat with care, back to the wall, eyes to the door, sunlight falling across my shoulder. Caleb and Maya sat opposite. He adjusted his tie like it was armor. She lounged in her chair, posture loose, pretending she wasn't cornered. But the folder between us stripped away the pretense. Its block letters read, "Separation and Restitution Agreement." The terms were surgical. Caleb would relinquish all access to my company's accounts, repay siphoned funds, and consent to automatic title transfers triggered by the prenup's misconduct clause. Maya's part was smaller in scope but sharper in consequence. A sworn undertaking to cut contact, disgorge every benefit she had funneled through Studio Nights LLC, and assist in dissolving the shell. Nothing optional. Every page heavy stock, deliberate like each word was carved in stone. The notary nodded for signatures, but before pens touched paper, I slid another folder onto the table. This one was thinner, glossy, New Dawn. Inside, slides mapped a rebranding scheme that would migrate contracts from my company into a fresh entity with Caleb as strategic lead. One bullet point froze the air, optics of marital signature. Caleb's throat tightened. "You brought props," he said, feigning humor. "I brought evidence," I answered. My phone buzzed. I pressed play on a recording Noah had captured outside the studio. Caleb's voice crackled clear. "If she signs tonight, it's done." The notary's pen froze midair. Silence pressed in, the kind that makes even dust sound loud. Caleb leaned back, weaving his new script. "You've neglected this marriage, Jenna. Always at the office, never home. I felt small, invisible. This isn't criminal, it's personal." His words angled for sympathy, shifting the forum from fact to feeling. I didn't blink. "This isn't about feelings. This is about numbers, and numbers don't lie." I tapped the restitution column, the repayment schedule, the signature lines, the county clerk reference number already filed. My attorney confirmed the temporary order restricting transfers of the marital home was public record. Irrevocable. Caleb's bravado dimmed under fluorescent light. Maya fidgeted, eyes darting between papers. Then she tried her last card. "I might be pregnant," she murmured, hand grazing her stomach. The room stilled. Caleb's eyes shot to her, then back to me, gauging whether the lie would land. "Congratulations," I said evenly. "We'll schedule a third-party test. I'll cover the cost." Her smirk collapsed. She nodded, stammered, eyes burning. There would be no performance tonight. Caleb shifted to pleading, palms out, tone softening. "Just give me a week, time to make this right." I stood, sliding the folder back into my tote. "You have 48 hours, not one more. No slammed doors, no shouting, just my footsteps steady across carpet." Behind me, the notary's pen moved again, capturing ink on paper, the moment the balance of power tipped. And for the first time, Caleb looked smaller, diminished, not by me, but by his own signature. Caleb didn't return with a pen. He returned with a camera. By noon the next day, his face filled a vertical frame, grief softened, staged, almost saintly. He spun a story for strangers, a brilliant but controlling wife who punished creativity, a jealous brother who ruined her birthday out of envy. He said he had made small mistakes in the dark only because I left no light on. He did not say royalty split. He did not say new dawn. The comments swarmed fast. Some friends slipped into my messages, cautiously hedging, maybe hear both sides. 2 investors pinged me with tidy notes, polite concern in every line. My mother called 3 times, my father once. They wanted the noise erased, begged for peace in private. I didn't answer them. I answered the investors with a packet. No clapback, no thread, just documents. My counsel sent takedown and preservation letters for defamation, locking Caleb's video into evidence, forbidding edits. My ops lead circulated a clean, time-stamped timeline to staff and clients, mapping every suspicious charge against devices and hotel logs. One friendly investor replied with a gift. Domain records Caleb had registered 2 months earlier, mirrors of my sub-brand purchased with our home IP. Clients don't trust storms. They trust instruments. And the more clarity they had, the calmer they became. Cancellations I had braced for never arrived. One client wrote, "We're staying. Thanks for the transparency." I read that line twice and let my lungs unclench. Maya's last gambit fizzled. After nodding along to a third-party pregnancy test she never intended to take, she went silent. My attorney sent a quiet reminder. Failure to appear would be treated as falsification. Still silence. Her anonymous fundraiser stalled, donations evaporated, and then the page vanished altogether. I wrote an email to my parents, not to argue, just to draw a border. I told them discretionary support had ended. Any future requests channeled through guilt would be treated as harassment. I told them I loved them, but I would only speak again when their first question wasn't "What does Caleb need?" They did not respond. Silence sometimes tells its own story. By late afternoon, the county clerk's site posted the restriction on home title transfers. Ordinary, public, mundane to outsiders. To me, it was a barricade, a shield. Caleb's attorney now faced a problem paper couldn't spin away. Why did a tax update folder contain slides redirecting maintenance contracts into a hidden entity with my husband at its helm? In video, you can cry. In a clerk's record, you initial. Online, Caleb posted again that evening. This time, the tone shifted to weary civility. He pleaded for privacy, for the sake of family. His thread filled with noise, commenters bickering until a mod locked it. The narrative shrank without oxygen. Offline minds swelled, bank logs, registrar receipts, prenup triggers, investor emails, quiet heavy proof, heavy wins. At the office, I walked floor to floor, answering questions directly. Yes, governance is secure. No, Caleb has no access. Yes, we are protecting our IP stack. No, client data is untouched. I repeated the lines until the nods came faster than the questions. on my desk. I left a one-page sheet anyone could repeat word for word, dates, actions, legal contacts, and one sentence in bold: "We do not litigate feelings at work." Maya finally broke her silence with a message thick with smoke: "Meet me, woman to woman, end the cycle of punishment." I replied with terms: sign the undertaking, disclose studio night's benefits, deliver devices for imaging, pick a time. She never answered. That night, I slept the way you sleep after a storm. Light, shallow, but steady, ready to wake if a branch cracked. In the morning, I checked the county docket again. The restriction was live, docket number assigned, initials stamped by the clerk. The only question left was venue. Caleb could choose a conference room or a courtroom. I preferred neither. I preferred signatures. The final meeting unfolded not in a courtroom, not under flashing lights, but in a quiet office with fluorescent bulbs buzzing overhead and the smell of paper thick in the air. No cameras, no stage, just signatures waiting to happen. Caleb sat across from me, smaller than he had looked in weeks, his bravado stripped away by deadlines he couldn't out-talk. Beside him, Maya leaned back, posture loose, her smirk brittle like a mask cracking under heat. At the far end, the notary waited, pen ready, her silence heavier than any judgment. My attorney laid the stack in order: withdrawal of access, restitution schedule, consent to title transfers. For Maya, no contact and disgorgement. Caleb signed first. His hand trembled once when asked to initial beside the word misconduct. Each scrawl on the page carved another piece of authority away from him. Access revoked, accounts severed, title surrendered. The prenup clause he once mocked had become the lever that moved everything. Maya followed. She tried to let her signature drift, casual and teenage, but her eyes betrayed her, darting again and again toward the thick folder of exhibits in front of me. She signed away studio nights, swore disclosure of every siphoned benefit, swore distance she could never reclaim. Careless ink holds as strongly as careful ink. There were no speeches, no confetti, just the sound of pens scratching, the hum of fluorescent light, and the air thick with inevitability. The next morning, one memo went out. Addressed to staff and core clients, no embellishment, no theatrics, governance secure, services uninterrupted. Leadership unchanged. That was all. No viral post, no triumph thread. Quiet credibility was the only applause I wanted. Later that week, Noah came to see me, not the reckless brother from the party, but the man who had smashed glass to stop a fraud. He stumbled through an apology for the chaos, for ruining the celebration. I cut him off. "You didn't ruin anything. You bought me time." For once, my brother had been the shield, not the saboteur. He handed me the hollow screw he'd found in the rubble of the shattered statue, the cavity Caleb had tried to use as a trap, a place to hide a page I was never meant to see. Now it was just empty glass, irrelevant as Caleb's excuses. In my new office, a smaller suite with sunlight clean and steady, I placed one frame on my desk. Not a wedding photo, not a trophy, just the first page of the separation and restitution agreement. Not a monument, a reminder that boundaries once drawn protect more than wealth. They protect breath, they protect sleep, they protect the right to own your name without permission. I didn't need applause, I didn't need revenge theater. I needed four things: my house safe, my company intact, my name clean, and my sleep back. And I had them all. On the first morning in that office, I turned my phone face down, let the light spill across the desk, and breathed. Not triumph, quiet. Not revenge, a correction. Because I hadn't just taken back money or property or paper. I had taken back my life. I had broken the pattern, funding chaos, mistaking guilt for love, letting others narrate my worth. That story was finished. And the next one began with simple assets, a locked account, a balanced ledger, and a door that only opened from the inside. That wasn't a meltdown. It was a timeline. He tried to win with a crowd and a camera. She answered with banks, clauses, and signatures. Numbers outlast narratives. In the end, there was no speech, no victory post, just a notary's pen, a locked account, a title secured, and a woman who took back her right to breathe without permission. That is what accountability looks like when love has been used as leverage. What would you have done at that party? confront him on the spot, or let paper walk first? Tell me in the comments. If this story resonated with you, like the video and subscribe to Cheating Stories 7 for more true-to-life betrayal dramas and the quiet power of consequences. Thank you for watching. Take care of your boundaries. We'll see you in the next story.